grew up in a small coastal city in the north of New Zealand. And my dad had boats, he was into boats in a big way. And we used to do a lot of coastal cruising. We had a 26-foot keelboat. And we'd sail during the day, and every night we'd look for a safe harbour to spend the night. And my dad knew most of the places that were well sheltered and so on, and we'd head for one of those. And usually there were some other boats in there as well, one or two. And there was a kind of, shall I say it, a kind of a fraternal atmosphere between people on yachts. Nobody needed to introduce each other. We wouldn't be there for too long. We'd put the anchor down. Somebody would get into a dinghy and come over and say hello. And people would gather in cabins and cockpits and share stories about destinations and passages, places that they'd been to and how they got there and where they were hoping to get to and some of the difficulties and pleasures on the way. And most of the time these people were just coastal cruising like us, going from safe harbour to safe harbour, but every so often we run into blue water sailors who are on their way to Tahiti or the Marquesas Island or someplace like that. And when I was 16, which is about this time, when that happened, I just kind of go into trance, because it was my dream to sail on a 35-foot boat to Tahiti, which I never did, mind you. And we'd probably never see these people again, but there was this kind of camaraderie between fellow travellers. Nobody was trying to sell anybody anything else. They were just sharing. And that's the spirit in which we're approaching this tonight, the three of us. So this is Daryl, and Rakesh, and myself, Chris, and we're very much fellow travellers. We've been following what I would call a reasonably heavy-duty spiritual path for a number of years. It's not always easy, and supporting each other makes an awful lot of sense. And the theme, yeah, is return ticket. Yeah, it's a theme that I think comes out of our own experience, really. That the journey upon which we're engaged, you might say a spiritual journey, to destinations which, well, I would say lie well beyond Tahiti, maybe well, right off the planet even. We follow this path. It's called Saint-Mat. It's spelled S-A-N-T-M-A-T. And we're not strong about organisations, but there is an organisation. It's called Know Thyself as Soul Foundation. There are small groups of us around Australia and around the world. We meet, meditate together, support each other, do things like that. And the way it's going to happen in the evening is that one of us will speak. I'll speak first and share something from my own experience. And then Daniel, I think, will sing first. And I didn't mention Daniel and Marissa, who have, you can say, come on the scene more lately, but have just taken our excitement level to different places. And then Rakesh, then Daryl will speak, and then Marissa will sing, and then Rakesh will speak, and then Daryl and then Marissa will sing. Right. And then we'll open it up for whatever conversations might ensue. And basically that's it. So I'll start. How's it sound? Is it okay? Shall I hold it closer?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, because I don't have a loud voice, right? When I was 26, I spent about 3 weeks in London on my way to study engineering in France. And I had this idea that I wanted to see or experience a full-scale symphony orchestra. I grew up in New Zealand, and I don't think we had full-scale symphony orchestras. The country was a bit small. And one evening, it was during the week, I took myself to the Royal Festival Hall and to do this. And I arrived late, and I was distinctly embarrassed. It seemed to me like it was something you didn't do in London. And the orchestra was playing, and the lights were down, and a kind usher walked me up one of the aisles with a torch and found a row that was completely empty. And I walked along there, bent over, trying to make myself invisible, and sat down, and for the first time turned my attention to the music and started sobbing. I was completely overwhelmed by the power and the beauty of the music. Just blew me away. It was like waves of music washed over me, and I just submerged in it. And it was completely involuntary. I was just taken by surprise. It was like reminding me of body surfing. There have been times when I've caught a good wave and I've been hanging out the front of it, and then I realised that it's going to drive me into the sand, and I pull out and roll into a ball, and the wave pulls me under and literally drubs me, and I'm running out of breath, and at a certain point the wave moves on and it lets me go, and I bob to the surface and go. That's what it was like. And then I kind of came back into ordinary consciousness and started listening to the music in the way that I might normally do. I didn't know what to make out of the experience at the time. I didn't really have, at 26, I don't think I had a framework to make sense out of it. And I just parked the experience. And there was another thing. It was the way in which I responded to some poetry that really kind of got to me in those years too, from time to time. Kind of going backwards in time, but when I was about 16 in English class, I encountered the Rime of the Ancient Mariner by Coleridge. And it's a story of one man's spiritual odyssey. It's a spiritual poem. It's a story in poetry form, like a ballad. It takes place on an old sailing ship, square-rigged sailing ship, maybe in the 19th century, on a long sea journey. And in those days, albatrosses used to trail behind some of the old sailing ships, and they would land on the decks. Big ungainly birds, a bit like pelicans. They're ungainly on land, but magnificent when they hit the air. And the sailors treated them as fellow travellers. They were kind of friendly. But the anti-hero, or the hero of the story, the ancient mariner, in a kind of a wanton act, shoots one with his crossbow. And a terrible curse descends upon him. He says that his heart was so dry, he couldn't even pray, he couldn't cry. And he was imprisoned in this curse. One night, he's looking over the edge of the boat, and in the moonlight, he sees small fish and water snakes kind of playing on the surface of the water. And the moonlight is glinting off their backs, and it's exquisitely beautiful. It's something I've seen many times when I've been boating. And he says, "O happy living things, no tongue their beauty might declare. A spring of love gushed from my heart, and I blessed them unaware. Sure my kind saint took pity on me, and I blessed them unaware. In that self-same moment I could pray, and from my neck so free, the albatross fell off and sank like lead into the sea. The curse was broken. Then that poem cut through my armour and touched my heart. But I didn't really know why or how, and I parked that too. You know, I think sometimes there was a sense of connecting with people. I would meet somebody the first time, and in 10 minutes it felt like I'd always known them. It's happened many times. And I kind of got it's a feeling that I've got used to. So about 4 years back, my wife and I walked into a Turkish artisan wear store in Newtown. We were looking for a decorative plate to store fruit in. And it was beautiful stuff. It was hand painted, but it was like out of reach financially, or it was out of proportion. And so I kind of gave up. And by that time I'd got to know the poetry of Mevlana Rumi, or Maulana Rumi as he's known in English. And I had a Turkish friend, and I knew that Rumi spent most of his life in Turkey, and he was a loved household figure in that country. And then people called him Mevlana, which is an affectionate but respectful term. So I wandered over to the sales counter, and there were two seriously looking Turkish dudes there. And I walked up to them and I said, so you come from the land of Mevlana? And both of them immediately transformed from salesmen into human beings. And then I said, this poetry is so beautiful. I have it on my iPhone. And the atmosphere warmed up further. And then I said, I often turn to it when I feel discouraged. And one of them said, and so do I. In that instant, any cultural or age or religious barrier that might have separated us dematerialized, and we saw each other. And I walked out of the store on air with a tear in an eye. I had a bit more of a handle, because that only happened 4 years ago, on how to make sense out of that. There were other things. But with time and just life experience, and in my 40s, I took a very sharp turn in the direction of spirituality and made some decision that was going to be my primary objective in life from there on.
The maestrissimo, and I think it has a very light yet powerful energy. I love it, and I'm really happy to be able to sing it today for the first time in the public. Yeah.
to start. I feel your love inside of me, and try to remember all that I was born to be. If only you could fly me when we're this close together, I wanted to last forever. So I turn to you and pray, fly me away. Fly me away.
There we go. All right. I have been juggling this talk for a few times, so I still have it in loose form, and I will juggle it around as I see fit tonight as well. Yeah, let's see. There we go. Rumi's getting a workout tonight for some reason or other. I'm going to start with the Rumi quote, but guess what? It's not a poem. It's him talking about poems. It's him talking about stories. And what he says is, a story is like water that you heat for your bath. It takes messages between the fire and your skin. It lets them meet and it cleans you. Very few can sit down in the middle of the fire itself. We need intermediaries. A feeling of fullness comes, but usually it takes some bread to bring it. Beauty surrounds us, but usually we need to be walking in a garden to know it. So what I want to look at, my little section, is this power of story and this power of metaphor to speak to us no matter where we are on these journeys. We heard Chris talking about almost those key turning points in life when suddenly a story or suddenly a poem will suddenly speak to you strongly, and it can completely change the way you look at life or the direction you might go in. What I started to do when I started to look at this whole area was I was looking for a returning motif that kept turning up in various stories that seemed to speak to this theme. And for me, it was this idea of a golden thread. And I kept coming across stories where the reference to a golden thread would turn up, but often in very different ways. It would sort of have a different function in different stories. But it seemed to have quite an ongoing radiance and an ongoing sort of power in these various stories. So what I want to do tonight is refer to some of those. I'll skip through. Some of these are very long stories, and we haven't got all night, so I'm going to do a little bit of paraphrasing. But I want to dip into the power of telling a story and find where does your brain go when you enter into a story, and where does it go when you come out again. So, as I'm looking at these various stories that talk about the golden thread, the question that I put into the room tonight is, what is the golden thread in your life? So we'll look at a few different forms and people talking to what that might be in these stories. But each time as we get to the end of it, I'll sort of pose the question. Let's put it up here. What is the golden thread in your life? Just fit it in the room. That's lucky. Let's start here. I'll do the little intro for this story. This story is actually called The Magic Thread. And then I'll skip through all of the very detailed middle section and we'll get to the end. Once upon a time there was a widow who had a son called Peter. He was a strong, able boy, but he did not enjoy going to school, and he was forever daydreaming. "Peter, what are you daydreaming about this time?" the teacher would say to him. "I'm thinking about what I'll be when I grow up," Peter replied. "Be patient, there's plenty of time for that. Being grown up isn't fun, you know," his teacher said. But Peter found it hard to enjoy whatever he was doing at the moment. And he was always hankering after the next thing. In winter he longed for it to be summer again, and in summer he looked forward to the skating, sledging and warm fires of winter. At school he would long for the day to be over so that he would go home, and on Sunday nights he would sigh, "If only the holidays would come." What he enjoyed most was playing with his friend Lisa. She was as good a companion as any boy, and no matter how impatient Peter was, she never took offence. "When I grow up, I shall marry Lisa," Peter said to himself. Often he wandered through the forest dreaming of the future. Sometimes he lay down on the soft forest floor in the warm sun, his hands behind his head, staring up at the sky through the treetops. One hot afternoon, as he began to grow sleepy, he heard someone calling his name. He opened his eyes and sat up. Standing before him was an old woman. In her hand, she held a silver ball from which dangled a silken golden thread. "See what I have got here, Peter," she said, offering the ball to him. "What is it?" he asked curiously, touching the fine golden thread. "This is your life thread," the old woman replied. "Do not touch it, and time will pass normally. But if you wish time to pass more quickly, you only have to pull the thread out a little way, and an hour will pass like a second. But I warn you, once the thread has been pulled out, it cannot be pushed back in again. It will disappear like a puff of smoke. The ball is for you, but if you accept my gift, you must tell no one, or on that very day you shall die. Now, say, do you want it?" So, sure enough, Peter grabs the ball, goes back to school. He's a bit wary of, trying it out. But I think he's in the middle of a boring class, and he thinks, I'll just give it a little test. So he just pulls the thread out just a little bit, and suddenly it's the end of school. And he's off home, and he thinks, hey, that's pretty good. He continues through, he gets through school, I think, and he graduates, and then he gets a letter that calls him up to the army. And so he's a similar thing, he weighs it up, and then he decides he'll just tug it a little, and then lo and behold, he's being released from the army, and all that time has gone. And he starts to see how effectively he can use this golden thread. Fast forwarding, he gets engaged to Lisa, But he can't wait, of course, for the wedding day, so he quickly pulls another little bit of the thread, so suddenly it's the marriage day, and he can finally enjoy that day that he's been anticipating for so long. They have 4 children or whatever, and so suddenly the house needs to be built, so he needs to expand, so he just pulls it a little more, and suddenly all the kids have left, and suddenly he can enjoy the retirement with his wife. But suddenly, she's getting aches and pains and getting illnesses, so he just pulls it a little more, and even though that might sort of solve that little problem, new ones seem to arise. So, one night, as he lay in his bed, kept awake by his worries, he thought of how much easier life would have been if all his children had grown up and launched their careers in life. So this is where we're up to in the story. And he gave the thread a mighty tug, and the following day he woke to find that his children had all left home for jobs in different parts of the country, and that he and his wife were alone. His hair was almost white now, and often his back and limbs ached as he climbed the ladder or lifted a heavy beam into place. Lisa too was getting old, and she was often ill. He couldn't bear to see her suffer, so that more and more he resorted to pulling at the magic thread. But as soon as one trouble was solved, another seemed to grow in its place. Perhaps life would be easier if he retired, Peter thought. Then he would no longer have to clamber about and drafty half-completed buildings and look after Lisa when she was ill. The trouble was that he didn't have enough money to live on. He picked the magic ball and looked at it. To his dismay, he saw that the thread was no longer silver, but grey and lustreless. He decided to go for a walk in the forest to think things over. It was a long time since he'd been in that part of the forest. The small saplings had all grown into tall fir trees, and it was hard to find a path he had once known. Eventually he came to a bench in a clearing. He sat down to rest and fell into a light doze. He was woken by someone calling his name. Peter, Peter. He looked up and saw that the old woman he had met so many years ago when she had given him the magic silver ball with the golden thread. She looked just as she had on the day, not a day older. She smiled at him. "So, Peter, have you had a good life?" she asked. "I'm not sure," Peter said. "Your magic ball is a wonderful thing. I've never had to suffer or wait for anything in life, and yet it has all passed so quickly. I feel that I've had no time to take in what has happened to me, neither the good things nor the bad. Now there is so little time left, I dare not pull the thread again, for it will only bring me to my death. I do not think your gift has brought me luck." "How ungrateful you are," the old woman said. "In what way would you have wished things to be different? Perhaps if you had given me a different ball, one where I could have picked the thread up and pushed the thread back in as well as pulled it out. Then I would have relived the things that went badly." The old woman laughed. "You ask a great deal. Do you think that God allows us to live our lives twice over? But I can grant you one final wish, you foolish, demanding man." "What is that?" Peter says. "Choose," the old woman said. Peter thought hard. At length he said, "I should like to live my life again as if for the first time, but without your magic ball. Then I will experience the bad things as well as the good without cutting them short, and at least my life will not pass as swiftly and meaninglessly as a daydream." "So be it," said the old woman. "Give me back my ball." She stretched out her hand and Peter placed the silver ball in it. Then he sat back and closed his eyes with exhaustion. When he awoke, he was in his own bed. His youthful mother was bending over him, shaking him gently. "Wake up, Peter, you will be late for school. You were sleeping like the dead." He looked up at her in surprise and relief. "I've had a terrible dream, Mother. I dreamed I was old and sick and my life had passed like a blinking of an eye with nothing to show for it, not even my memories." His mother laughed and shook her head. "That will never happen," she said. "Memories are the one thing we all have, even when we are old. Now hurry and get dressed. Lisa is waiting for you and you'll be late for school." As Peter walked to school with Lisa, he noticed what a bright summer morning it was. The kind of morning when it felt good to be alive. Soon he would see his friends and classmates, and even the prospect of lessons didn't seem so bad. In fact, he could hardly wait. So that's our first example of the golden thread as something that obviously runs through your life in some way or another. So now is probably our first chance to ask ourselves that question again. What is the golden thread in our lives? What is the golden thread in our lives? The next story is a very convoluted one, and I'm going to do my best to compact it as quickly as I can. It's actually an old Kabbalah story, and so it has quite a lot of amazing detail in it if you get a chance to sort of get into the whole story. Basically, it starts like a magic kingdom. There's a king and queen, princess and princesses, and everything is magical. The plants talk to them, so if they've got any question at all, they just ask nature, and all the questions are given them directly. As the children grow up, they learn that the land that they're on is surrounded by a moat. And on the other side of the moat, they're told that there's an upside-down world where everyone told lies. The worst kind of lies, the ones that contain a kernel of truth. Then you never know what's true and what's false. You never know what to accept and what to reject. At least if someone lies all the time, then you know that everything they say is wrong. So they go about their life, and then suddenly the princess and the prince find themselves at the edge of the moat. They glimpse a beautiful flower from afar, one they'd never seen before, and they hurried towards it. They didn't realise they were also approaching the moat's edge until it was too late. And when they looked up and glanced across to the other side, they saw a sparkling, shimmering miniature world. The little boy quickly turned and ran away, but the little girl couldn't break her gaze. She was transfixed by the sight of another tiny girl who looked exactly like her standing on the other side. And the more she looked, the bigger the other girl became. And the bigger she became, the more impossible it was for her to turn away. And so the princess stood there frozen in rapt attention, watching this little girl on the other side, who looked just like her, getting bigger and bigger and bigger, until she reached right over the moat and snatched the little princess from her palace grounds and brought her to the other side. Now the flower that was the cause of the calamity had a prickly stem. When the princess was snatched, her skirt swept against its thorns, and the golden thread that had adorned the princess's dress was snagged by one of the thorns. And so, as the princess departed, the thread unravelled from her dress and became a golden strand that connected her back to her home and its magical world inside the moat. The princess didn't know this, though, for on the other side she was never allowed to look back. Not that she knew where back was, for she was so disorientated by her abduction she had lost all her directions. But they knew and made sure she never looked back. Her brother hadn't realised what was happening until it was too late. When he turned to run, he thought his sister was following right behind. When he turned back to check, he was horrified to see her snatched by a giant look-alike from across the moat, which took her to the other side. It all happened in an instant. Yet for the princess, it took thousands of years to pass from one side of the moat to the other. As soon as she was touched by her look-alike captor, she swooned, and her whole life passed before her eyes. Not just her own 12 tender years, but the history of her whole family lineage that was locked inside her cells. And even the history of the universe that was the story of the atoms and molecules that comprised her body. It all passed through her awareness. She relived all this as though it were really happening. Now she understood. This is what it means to die. Only later did she realise what was going on. Her body was shrinking, which meant that most of her soul could no longer fit inside. There wasn't enough room for it anymore, and so that it was being squeezed out. Each piece, as it left, passed through her awareness and showed her all that it knew, and then departed, leaving a memory trace, like a dream, in the princess's mind. She relived the history of the universe up to the present. And when her dream reached the present, she popped awake and found herself in a palace that looked like her own, with servants and grounds and many rooms. At first she thought she really was at home, and that all this was a dream. So slowly she realised that she wasn't at her home at all, because the music was very different. The creatures here didn't sing those sweet melodies that exposed the truth of their souls. Instead, they made noise that sounded harmonious, but when you listened in, it took you away from yourself and focused you outward instead of in. The princess knew she wasn't at home, though they tried their best to make her forget this fact. So that's the launch of the story. It then goes into some amazing detail about a whole underground society and the relationship of the under society with the over society. And she's sort of entailed and brought in to try and resolve the differences between the two. But for the sake of our golden thread story, I'm going to skip right towards the end when we say she's then meets up again with her family on that side of the moat, and they go, "Do you remember what happened when you crossed the moat from your garden paradise to the other side? Do you remember your body shrinking and your soul being squeezed out?" The princess nodded. "Do you remember what happened to your soul when it left you that day? Now I'm going to fill in some details. Your soul fell into the upside down world where it shattered into many thousands of pieces. And each piece grew into a whole person with a personality unto itself. As you might now guess, we are they. Each one of us working class labourers carries a piece of your lost soul in our hearts. We are a missing part of you, and we are a missing part of us. Now, the reason we are slaves in this world instead of full citizens is because we possess an unconcealable flaw. Whenever we lie, our skins turn white and everyone knows not to believe what we've said. With this flaw, we could never be full-fledged citizens of the upside world. We could never do business, we would starve. So this is the appeal for her to help them restore their society. And then to bring it home, what happens is, this is actually quite nice, I'll come back a little bit. She makes some rules for everybody. She makes some rules for everybody to reveal this soul essence, essentially. She said, she then assigned each of the elders to a partner, men with men, women with women. Without having been briefed about the history of their quarrels, the princess uncannily paired everyone with their nemesis, the person whose opinions each found most intolerable, the person who protected their sources but could not hear a word. Your first assignment is to sit with your partners an hour each day. On each day, one person speaks and the other is silent. First say a prayer together, then one speaks and the other is silent. The more deeply the princess bonded with her night labouring soulmates, the more whole she became. The more her heart opened to them, the more they lived inside her, and the brighter she shined. The problem of solar sensitivity in the kingdom became so severe that the upside-down people soon became confined to their homes. The solar rays were now lethal to them. They were forced to delegate more and more high-level responsibilities to their slaves until their roles became reversed. Apparently the very same defect in the slaves that made their skin turn white whenever they lied also contained an unanticipated benefit. They were now able to convert solar rays into wisdom. The brighter the princess became, the brighter the kingdom became. The deeper she bonded with her soulmates who were now running the kingdom, the thinner the boundaries grew between them. These changes built upon each other at a rapidly accelerating rate. With each passing day, the princess's skin grew more and more transparent, which caused her to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Eventually, her kingdom mates fused with her and she fused with them. They didn't need formal meetings anymore because her thoughts reverberated through their souls. And on a smaller scale, the same thing was happening with each slave in his household. They too were bonding and fusing and enlightening in this very same way. The princess's father appeared to her in a dream. Now, my precious daughter, you are ready to come home, and all you have to do is follow the golden thread that is still attached to your dress, and it will lead you right back to your garden abode. That golden thread has linked you to us throughout your ordeal. Through its cord, your light and guidance descended. Now it's time to follow it the other direction and bring yourself and your kingdom and all its inhabitants back home. Yet garden world will be safer now thanks to you. You will see that there is no longer a need for the moat because there is no longer another side. Because of you, everything is dedicated to light. That's the end of that story. So I want to offer this particular perspective on what that actual naam, that golden thread within the universe might be, and another perspective on how to look at it. This is from Kirpal Singh. This naam is then the controlling power of the universe. It is the great cementing force whereby various elements, so very divergent in nature, are held together in the wonderful mosaic of the many-coloured dome of the universe. It is the string of life running through the entire creation, and thus the connecting link between the Creator and His creation. What is the golden thread in my life? This is the question. What we're going to offer now is a brand new perspective on what that golden thread is. This is a new song that is approximately 3.5 weeks old. And it's called The Golden Thread. I'm going to clear my keyboard.
seek your permission to speak. Everyone learns through life, and I have not known anything more intimately than my own life. Perhaps this is a day of metaphors. I'll give you something in metaphor only. Once, when I was young and capable, I arrived at a garden. This garden was known as the Garden of Uno. Many things happens in this garden. I can't, because limitation of time, probably I cannot say everything what was happening there. Maybe a few things from eternity to the present day. The day of arrival. When I arrived at the garden, things were very feeble, light. They were all hazy. I did not understand anything then. I was associated with some individuals, and they took care of me. They were caring for me in every way, and mostly I was dependent on them. I was just opening my eyes to this garden, to coming in terms with this garden. The very first thing I remember, probably it was middle of the day, it was bright sunshiny day then, lots of people were around. But somehow I felt very lonely and very distant from everyone. What was that? I did not understand. And later in the evening on that particular day, it was for the first time I heard of Uno. And I was told everything that belongs here in this garden is, whatever is there belongs to Uno. In this garden, out of this garden, beyond this garden, and within this garden, everything belonged to Uno. It created sort of fervor in me. I do not know what it was. Late, I think it was dusk, when I had the first glimpse of my friend. He was just on the side of a mountain, and immediately I thought of walking on the footprints of Uno. Will the footprints of Uno be something other than the footprints of this friend of mine? I was just not sure what it is. And slowly I dozed off on that day. Early morning of the next day, my associate took me to this friend of mine. When I was still at a distance, I heard some beautiful music. Some melodies, wonderful melodies were playing there. This friend was standing, and I just went there and sat down. I closed my eyes. The wonderful music was playing on. And suddenly I had a tap on my shoulder. I saw. The friend asked me, "What do you hear?" I was just awestruck. I did not issue any response. And when I looked at it, I looked around. The music was going on, but there was no instrument playing it. What is all this? Such wonderful music, and nothing was being played on? What sort of music is that? I was just wonderstruck. I sat there on the feet of my friend. He was talking about something. He was speaking about a path. I did not understand much what sort of path he is talking about. I was still very young in this garden. He was saying there is a path which is very bright path. And that path is a different path, not what you walk all day. I did not understand much, but I was awestruck with this music. What sort of music is that? I wanted to test this friend of mine. I put some hours listening to him, thinking about what it is. He was talking about so many different things. I did not understand. I was trying to analyze. Nothing made any sense. Then, when few hours are spent in trying to analyze all this, I just raised my head and looked at this friend. He had such wonderful eyes. He spoke so swiftly, spoke so sweetly. Such a love, such humility in him. Who could he be? I did not understand. Late in the afternoon, I was really puzzled. What should I do? Then I heard a call. My friend was calling me. He called me and took me to a far distant mountain. This mountain was between and beyond two high brows. There were two high brows in those two mountains, and there was a path between and beyond these two high brows, and there was light shining there. He asked me to sit there, and when I sat there, the music was more intense than that was in the morning. After a few hours, I came back. I came back to the garden. And when I came back to the garden, I really immediately forgot about all that. The garden appeared to be very beautiful also. On the one side there was this garden, and on the other side there was this mountain path, the bright mountain path. They were very distinct from each other. I could not make much out of it. Then, on the following day, I realized, yes, indeed, this garden is wonderful. It has got everything in here. This wonderful garden was unique in itself. This garden had 9 golden gates, and there was all sorts of amenities there, and there was every kind of knowledge in there. I was slowly trying to acquire that knowledge, and I realized that everyone in this garden is covered in some sort of a vesture. And this vesture, what kind of this vesture was? There was a vesture which was such a wonderful vesture, and this vesture and the garden were somehow linked together. And then someone told me, look, this vesture, this garden, though everything belongs here to Uno, but this garden, this vesture is ruled by a ruler of desires. The ruler and desire have created all that is seen here. And there is a ruler and there is this desire. The ruler has an agent which is embedded into this vesture. And that agent, the embedded agent, have 5-pronged sensor through which everything in the garden was perceived. And that made the garden so beautiful. And everything linked to the garden, to me, was through this vesture. Somehow, this vesture was so much identified with myself that I could not see anything of my own. It was something like, I owned the vesture and I own this agent of desire, and I own this 5-pronged sensor, but somehow this 5-pronged sensor was being controlled by this agent of desire. What is this? It is something like the horse was supposed to draw the cart, but somehow the cart was put in front of the horse. Somehow this 5-pronged sensor, controlled by this agent of desire, was controlling everything in that garden. And it looked so wonderful there. I had already forgotten about everything about that music and that friend of mine and that mountain. There was nothing that I remembered then. I was completely ensconced in that garden. Everything appeared so beautiful, so wonderful. I thought, yes, this is the most intimate and wonderful thing I have here. And suddenly, I was just mesmerized with everything in this garden. Next day, for the first time, I heard a news. My associate told me the news that a friend of mine is leaving his vestures to go away to 3 mountains and will never return back to this garden. I was devastated. Suddenly I remembered all that I had forgotten. I remembered what he was saying, what music that was. I remembered what he said when we were there once on the Mount of Sumeru, and there were many other associates also with me. He said to us, look, don't be linked with this garden. This vesture you see is not yourself. You are distinct from this vesture. You see this garden? The ruler of desire has created these 9 golden gates, and beyond these 9 golden gates, he has created 84 towers. Now whosoever goes through 9 golden gates and passes through 84 towers comes back again to the garden. It is like a maze. Look, come here, come up to the mountain and see for yourself this maze. When you come up to the mountain, you will see the maze. From the garden, you cannot see the maze. You go through any of these gates, you will come back to the garden again. This is the scheme of this ruler of desire. ruler and the desire, and ruler of desire. They are created in such a way that no individuals embedded with this vesture escapes from this garden. They have created so that if you go through any of one of these 9 gates, you will somehow come back to this garden again. And all the time you're going out, you're coming back, all the time you're going out and coming back. But I'll tell you another gate. This door is the 10th door. The 10th door is up between and beyond the 2 high-brow mountains. If you go from that door, you will escape from this garden. You come here to the 10th door and persist on this door. If you persist on this door will come ajar, and you will see the bright light from there and a path through which you can escape from this garden. You know, this 10th door appears to be very small, but the path is very wide. These 9 gates appear to be the golden gates, very wide. The path is very narrow and bring you back to the garden. And this is the place from where, on the 10th door is the place from where you can escape. And someone asked, now, as you are leaving this vesture here, you're discarding this vesture, how will we see you again? He said, oh no, I was always here. I'm just a guide. I always come here to this garden. I was always here. I will always be here. And then someone asked, how will you be here when you are leaving the vesture? He said, vesture is not that important. Try to understand. This is the truth of Uno that is manifested into the vesture. And that is always there. This truth of Uno manifested in this vesture is always there. And when it is manifested in the vesture, it is known as the beloved of Uno. And he always guides you. He never leaves you. And he tells you about the 10th door. Why you are so much mesmerized with the maze of the garden. Don't you believe in my words? Just listen to this and come and experience for yourself. This is the path which will take you away from this garden and this maze of the garden. And then someone asked, but how we are going to recognize you if you have left this vesture here? He said, oh, don't you know, if your friend today comes wearing a black coat and then the next day he comes wearing a white coat, will you not recognize him? Of course you will recognize him. And this thing continues, this always continues. And remember, the light comes from light. And the yesterday's sun will not give you sunshine or heat. You have to find today's sun. Who can give you this light and heat? Go and find the guide for yourself. Who can show you this path? Who can make you escape from this garden? And who will take you through this 10th door where this bright light is there and this music which you heard on that day is played. This music gives you the string. You hold on to that string and we will reach from that music, from where the music is coming out. And this light will be showing you the path, and walk on that path and you will not go in the darkness. And that was when I heard that he discarded his vesture and went away beyond and between these high-brow mountains, never to return back again. But then I remembered, he told that this light, this word manifested will never leave you. He should be there somewhere in this garden. I have to keep my eyes open. And after so many years, so many days, so many decades, so many eternities past, I'm still going out of these 9 gates, coming back, going out of these 9 gates and coming back. When will be the time I'll go through this death door and see the light for myself? And then that was the dusk, and I saw the birds in the sky. The south birds were going home, the north birds were going home, the east birds were going home, the west birds were going home, and it was not I who was going home. And then I remembered the poem of great saint that if on your call no one listens, no one comes with you, doesn't matter, walk alone. Walk along that path, and that's it. I have to walk along that path. I have to walk along that path. Thanks.
It's all in one vision, all in one picture. The name of the song is called One.
I'd just like to say thank you. It's okay. Thank you to our storytellers. And I think we had some angelic voices in the room tonight. So thank you very much.